Hey there, I'm Tanner Mouche from Church Plugins, and today I'm really excited to show you CP Sermons. CP Sermons is the most advanced Sermon Manager plugin for WordPress, and we built a ton of very useful tools and functionality into it that I am really excited to show you. So let's jump in and take a look at this. So for starters, it's really easy to create a message. You open up the menu over here, you click Add New, and then you just start filling it in. You can, for the message audio and video, you can paste in a YouTube link, upload a video or audio file, and you can even paste in an embed here if you're using a proprietary service. Down here, we have the ability to add any notes or anything that you want, and you can add as many of these as you want if you have a notes file or if you have a bulletin that you want to include with this message. Down here, we have the scripture. We have a scripture picker to help make sure that there aren't any typos or anything like that. You just select the scripture reference and it adds it automatically for you just like that. Over here in the sidebar, we have a list of topics. Now, this is one of the things that's really cool. We've actually curated a list of most popular topics for churches right in here. So you don't need to come in and define your own topics. You can pick from the list. Same thing with seasons. You just select the season that fits best, and you're good to go. Now, if you want to add seasons and topics, you can do so right over there. But the majority of time, the pre-built seasons and topics will work just fine. You can specify the series for your sermon. And one of the things that's unique about this is you can specify multiple different series. If you wanted to have like a best of, and then you wanted to have the particular series that your church is going through, you can do that. And then you can also have multiple speakers associated with that sermon. All right, let's go talk about series. Creating a series is very similar to this. You just add the series title, any descriptive elements. We do have the ability to come in here and manage series items. So if I want to, if I take a look at this series, we have 2 sermons in here already, and you can actually manage the sermon content right here in the series view. You can have a featured image for the series, and again, topics and seasons apply to series as well. Speakers are pretty straightforward. You can add the speaker details, you add the speaker featured image, and then any of these speakers can be associated with any of the different messages. We talked a little bit about seasons already. So there is a built-in list of seasons that I had mentioned. These are those built-in seasons. And then if you wanted to add any additional ones, you can do so here. These built-in seasons will not show up in this list area until they're actually used. But then once you do, you will be able to see the number of sermons that are associated with them. Same thing is true of topics. Here's a list of the built-in topics that we have, and then you can add any additional topics that you may want to. Templates is a really unique bit of functionality that we've built into our Sermon Manager plugin. Instead of creating a bunch of different shortcodes for you to use, we've actually created a shortcode builder. So if you wanted to have a shortcode for most recent, and then we come in here and add the block, and I'm going to go to browse. Oops, I'm going to go to browse all. Now you can come down here and you could add the sermon query, and you could build it from scratch, or you can come over here and use one of our pre-built patterns. So within we have pre-built patterns for both messages and series, and so you can see what these look like. So this is the latest sermon, this is the latest sermon and series, so on and so forth. So if I wanted to add a block to the home page with the latest sermon and series, I could add that right here. And then, not sure why there was an error there. It does work. And then you would copy this shortcode and you could add it to any page that you wanted to insert this shortcode onto, and it'll just work. And you can create as many different templates as you want, and you can use those shortcodes to drop them on to various pages. This can be really helpful if you have a like a conference or something like that that has its own set of messages, and you want to embed those messages directly onto that conference page. You can do it just like that. We have some tools baked into this. One is import, so you can use this sample CSV to fill in your existing sermons and import them right here. You can also export your messages as a CSV. And then sometimes when we've done bulk imports, we end up with speakers that were listed multiple times with slightly different names. You can use the speaker merge tool to merge those together. Finally, we have analytics. And this is really cool. This is like YouTube style analytics for your sermons. It'll show you how many views each sermon has, the average play duration, how many of those are engaged plays, which we have defined as watched 70% or more. And this will give you a real good look at how your congregation is engaging with your sermons. And then you can specify the time duration to show up in this analytics section. Finally, we'll look at a few different options that are in here. You can add a logo that will be used. I'll show you here in a sec where that is used. And then a default thumbnail to use for any message or series that does not have a thumbnail already defined. And then you can also adjust some of the labels for the play audio or play video buttons. Within messages, you can adjust labels here also. There are some template options to adjust how what items are being displayed within the message context, and I'll cover that again later. And then we also have a few different template options for displaying those messages. I'll cover variations in another video. This is some beta functionality that we've built that allows you to have multiple sermons. Like if you have two services and you want to upload both sermons, they can both show up in the same section. So if that's something that you're interested in and we don't have the documentation up yet, feel free to shoot us a message at support@churchplugins.com. Series has the same label controls, and then you can also specify the aspect ratio to show on the series archive page. When you're on a series single page, you'll also see the different messages within that series, and you can define whether or not those messages show up in ascending or descending order, and whether or not the messages are sorted by title or publish date. Speakers, you can adjust those if you wanted to change that to preacher or something like that. And then you can also specify whether or not to enable the linking of the speaker's name to show a speaker page that shows all of their messages. Finally, we have the advanced settings. We have series and speakers enabled for this demo. If you are just have a super simple implementation and you're not using series or you're not using speakers, you can even turn those off. We have a few items that are not turned on right this second, but I'll turn those on and show you in just a minute. Service types allows you to specify different service types. This is great for if you wanted to include messages from a Wednesday night service or a Bible study or something like that. We have some really pretty cool podcast functionality that I'll show you here in a second. And then we also have integration with SermonAudio. So if you upload your messages to SermonAudio already, you can enable this feature and it will automatically pull your messages in from SermonAudio when you upload them there. So you don't have to upload your sermons to SermonAudio and then upload them to the website. That will happen automatically. You can control some of your admin settings. So if you want a message, right now I've got messages shows up as the default menu item. If you wanted to change that to series, you could. If you do not want to use the built-in season or topics, you can disable those here. We're going to look at filters on the front end here in just a minute. And you'll see that it shows the different numbers of sermons associated with each of the different filters. You can have a count threshold for the filters. So if you have one of the topics is baptism, and if you only have one sermon on baptism, and so you don't want baptism to show up in those filters, you can specify how many messages have to show up in a particular topic for that topic to show up in the filters. You can also, hang on a second. You can also disable filters. So if you're not using Scripture or Seasons or whatever, and you don't want them to show up as filters on the front end, you can do so here. And then finally, you can adjust the sort order of these different filter items right in here. All right, so I'm going to enable service types and podcast feeds. We'll look at the settings for those, and then we'll jump over to the front end and see how everything looks there. All right, so we have a few new options now that we have enabled service types, podcast, and SermonAudio. Service types allows you to change your labels. So again, this can be any. This is really kind of like a catch-all categorization. So if you want another way to be able to segment your sermons, you can do that here. And then service types shows up over here, and you create those just like you would create a speaker or a series. Podcast has a whole bunch of options for you to fill out. This is a feed that is optimized for iTunes and Google Play. So all of this information gets added to the feed so that it shows up correctly in those different podcasting systems. And one of the things that I'll show you when we get to the front end is that not only do we have a main podcast feed that shows a list of your sermons, but you can also add feed podcast to just about any of the CP sermon URLs. So if you wanted to have a podcast for a particular topic, you want to have a podcast on all of your messages in Matthew, or you wanted to have a podcast for a particular sermon series, you could add this feed podcast URL to the end of that series URL, and it would give you a podcast for that specifically. And then finally, we have the SermonAudio settings, where you can define your API key, broadcaster ID, and then a few other settings to manage what that import looks like. All right, that was a lot. So let's hop over to the front end and take a look at how this all works. All right, so on the front end, this is the default messages list view. We have the option to switch to series here. And so this is where we have our series grid. You can see that we've got some different variation in the size of images here. This is where I would come in and in that series settings section, want to define a consistent aspect ratio for those. 4:3 should work well for us. So now if I refresh this, you can see all of the series have the same image size. This just helps maintain consistency, even if, your graphics don't all have the same size. Going back over here to messages, this is a look at the different filters that we have. And so we see all of the different scripture that is associated with these different messages and the number of sermons associated. So if I wanted to select Habakkuk, I can see I've got 5 sermons there. I can combine these filters together. I don't have a huge sample size here, so I might not be able to demonstrate this real well. Oh, here we go. Okay, so Romans, Rick has 2 of these sermons, so I can do both of these. Now I get Rick's sermons in Romans. And then you can see that some of these filters are grayed out. That's just because we don't have any content in there. None of the sermons are associated with them. And so as you select items that don't have any filter options available, those items will just remain grayed out. Within this view, we have a pretty cool piece of functionality, which is a persistent player, which means that I can click on the watch button here, and it'll pop up a player right down here, and I can actually browse around the site, and this player stays active as I scroll around. I can close it, go back to messages, and then it just works. And this has full compatibility for all of the different WordPress themes that we've tried. Works with audio as well. Pops up a nice little audio player. Now, if we want to click into the individual sermon page, we get a nice clean layout here. We're using the 2-column layout for this demo site. And again, you can watch, you can listen here, you can share, download the audio. You can initiate the persistent player right from this setting. And it all just works like that. You can click in and go view the series for that sermon. So this is the single series view, and it shows you the details for the series, and it shows you all of the different sermons in this series. And then if I click on a sermon within this series view, it'll give it to me within the context of the series. So you can see up here in the URL, we're still in the Romans Gospel According to Paul series. We're just looking at the union with Christ message, and this allows us to give a back button so that you can go right back to the series there. I mentioned about podcasting earlier. So let's take a look at what this looks like. So the podcast feed, you can see it has the iTunes and Google Play information that are required by those platforms. This is a list of all of our sermons, so it should have a list of 10 items, I think is the WordPress default for a feed like this. And then if I were to click through in this series and add the same thing, so add feed, podcast right in here, now you can see we're in Romans, the Gospel According to Paul. This is the series, and it's only going to show the sermons from this podcast, from this series. So you could create a series-specific podcast if you wanted to. One of the last items that I think I teased earlier is this templated area. So you have control over what information shows up in the different within the message list items. Right now we have it set to speaker and series, and then date and scripture. And you can change that. So you have a few different options. You can kind of mix and match. You can adjust the sort order for those. If you want date to be up top, we can remove it from there and add publish date up top. And then that'll adjust the layout here. So now you can see we've got date up top and only the scripture down here on the bottom. All right, let's see if I missed anything. I think that is about it. We'll do more videos to dive deeper into some of this functionality, but we're really excited about the Sermon Manager. We've gotten some great feedback from the folks that are using it, and if it's something that would help your church, we'd love to have you give it a try. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out, or you can reach us at support@churchplugins.com. Thanks, and you have a great day.